Hello ladies and gentlemen, Ollie here and welcome back to the channel once again. We have just finished the end of Block 2, Week 3 here at Warwick Med School, so that's the third week of the second block, or the 8th total week of the course. Now I'm going to try and make this video a little bit shorter than some of the others. I tend to ramble a little bit, so I'm just going to jump straight in with Monday. We'll see what we did. So as I've said before, this is the second block. It's blood, heart and lungs, so we're looking at kind of cardiology, respiratory system stuff, so it only makes sense, I suppose, that to talk to us about the structure and function of the heart, we had a consultant anaesthetist come in. So this was all about things like the very rough anatomy of the heart, the way that pressure affects circulation of the blood, how the different valves work, and a very, very basic guide on how to interpret an ECG, which is actually something I'm going to learn more about this week in another optional lab session. It was really interesting and well presented, actually, given the amount of content that the guy had to get through. And something quite funny happened, well, not funny, but you'll see. So there was this habit that we had as a cohort for the first few weeks where you'd kind of clap. There'd be a clap at the end of every single lecture, even if it was a lecture we'd had before. I completely understand if it's a guest lecturer who will appreciate that applause at the end and the signal of appreciation, but obviously because we were having lectures from the same people, we kind of stopped doing that, and sometimes people are a little bit kind of, they will clap but tentatively at the end of some lectures, and the block lead for block 2 pointed out at the end of these lectures that the anaesthetist that had come in to speak to us hadn't slept properly in several days because of his job. I think they'd had a quite complicated patient to deal with in their department, and so having not slept properly in several days, and then had been told that he had to update his slides to come and teach us on the Monday. He'd also not slept properly on the Sunday night as well, and had spent a good part of the night preparing his slides for us, so there was a little bit of a pause, like a 10-second delay at the end of the lecture, but I started off a clap, which thankfully did kind of sweep through. I felt really, really bad for the guy, so if anyone deserves a clap, it's probably him. We then had a lecture from a psychologist about the reasons why patients might struggle to drop certain behaviours. So if you're trying to rehabilitate a smoker, for example, who's got a lung condition, whose quality of life might be improved by the cessation of smoking, what psychological factors come into play that might allow them to get through that, or equally might cause them to find that process very difficult. And I actually did in first year of my undergrad, so in 2014, I did a psychology module. We had to choose an optional module in first year out of 3 choices, none of which were particularly good, but or particularly relevant to me, I should say. But I chose the psychology one, and that was kind of the basics of behavioural psychology, so looking at the work of people like Skinner and Pavlov, and a lot of that actually came back in this lecture. It was useful. There's a weird thing with sock pop, actually, that I think that happens. I mean, we're only 8 weeks in, but noticeably between that first lecture and the sock pop lecture, about a third, I think, of the class disappeared or left the lecture theatre. I'm not sure exactly what it is that causes sock pop to be not taken as seriously. I think because we know it's important, like no one disputes that. It's a bit fluffier in nature. It's not like hard and fast science. A lot of it is either theoretical or full of things that are very difficult to quantify, and that irritates me, like with any subject. That's not restricted to this. And as I say, we all appreciate that the things they're trying to teach us are very important to practice as a good doctor or healthcare practitioner. We get that. I think it's maybe because when you're going through what you need to know for the exam, the lectures can seem like an inefficient way to learn it. You know, if you could go through the material yourself in like 15-20 minutes, which in some other cases you can, logically, why would you go to the hour-long lecture when you could do that by yourself? And I really don't know how to address that. I have an interest in medical education, and it's something that I want to do a bit of reflection on, and maybe talk to some people about And basically we all kind of took turns to go around and voice out loud what we thought was going well, what wasn't going so well, and how we might be able to address things, which I think was really constructive. And we actually, I think, ended up ignoring a lot of the case and instead just went through a lot of the normal anatomy and physiology rather than focusing on the pathology and pathophysiology of the case. So hopefully that's something we'll be able to take forward and implement in future sessions. Now on Tuesday we had our first community day kind of proper, so we went and interviewed patients and other agents related to them. So I want to be really careful with what I say here because of confidentiality issues. What I recommend you do is go to my blog and read, I think I've got down that it's day 58 on the blog, First Community Patient. If you want to know a lot more about what I thought after that day, go and read that, because I took the time to make sure it was properly anonymized, but you could still get the significant points out of it and understand what I'm trying to say reasonably well. The very condensed version, I think, is that we saw a patient who was not particularly mobile, and that was having some of an impact on their quality of life. Thankfully they had family nearby to deal with it, but at the end of the day, it really made me think about what they call the biopsychosocial model of medicine, where you have to consider. Actually, I should provide some background. I spoke to some other colleagues at the end of the day about their experiences, and what came out of that was that even though our patients had received, probably excellent healthcare, were looked after very well, and basically the medical care was the same, their quality of lives, yes, were actually very different because of the social factors at play. So in one case they had family nearby, and that meant that they were able to kind of get out and go and do things and spend time with their family. But in another case, this patient didn't actually have any family close by, and as a result, would obviously feel quite isolated, not able to go far, unassisted, and that had such a huge impact. And I think that's something I haven't really thought about before because I've never asked the questions, and I think you just have to pay attention, or I say I, when I'm trying to make my decisions in the future, should always consider the social context in which medical treatment occurs, because it's all well and good if someone comes in with a broken hip or something, kind of fixing them up and sending them on their way, but I think the goal, at least as far as I'm concerned, what I would want for me if it was my own healthcare, I would want quality of life to be preserved, I think, over sort of biological health. And so it's just something I think we all have to pay more attention to in the future. That's what made the community day worthwhile for me. It helped me learn something new, and it was really interesting talking to the patient. Very grateful to the patient and those agents for allowing us to come and talk to them very candidly about the healthcare system, so that was really cool. The other thing I do really quickly want to say about that is that I asked the patient and one of the agents at the end was, what qualities do you think make a good healthcare professional? So not thinking just about doctors, but healthcare professionals in general. And what was repeated both times, and I've heard this from what my course mate said, was it was all about little things, but the main thing was just appearing to be interested and engaged with the patient. Like it doesn't seem to be about, or at least in the cases we were talking about, academic brilliance, although of course that's probably very good, or anything like that. It was just appearing to take an interest, smiling, and appealing, and appearing like you really cared. I think that's the point, and that shouldn't be an effort to, I've used a bad set of terminology there. It's not about appearing to care, as in it's not something that you should put on a facade to do. It's, you should genuinely care and take an interest in the patient. But as I say, please go and actually read the blog entry for that day. That would mean a lot to me. I put a lot of effort into that one, and there's a long kind of passage in there. I'd love to know what you think about it, but I'll leave a description note down below, so go and check that out. Wednesday was a bit of an irritating day, so I woke up with a stonking migraine. I do get them occasionally, and So I woke up ready to go in for the 9 o'clock lecture, but I just was not capable of moving very far without feeling really, really sick. So I took some painkillers, went back to sleep for another, I don't know, hour and a bit, just kind of waiting for the pain to go away, my painkillers to kick in. Woke up in time to go in for CBL at 11, and unfortunately, because of where I live in Leamington, so I live on the north side, which is the side closest to the university. But what that means is that when the buses come through Leamington to pick up all the students to go into uni, they come from the south side, so by the time they get to the north side, they're often full. So I did actually go down in good time to try and avoid that problem. So CBL was at 11, I think I left the house at about 10 past 10, and to get the bus at 20 past. So first one comes past completely full. I thought, well, you know, fair enough, I expected that. The next one comes past about 15 minutes later, completely full. I then start to get a bit edgy, but, you know, let the others know in my CBL group that I could be a bit late. Then the next one comes past, and this is like 11:15 at this point, bearing in mind it's a 10-minute journey to uni by bus. That one's completely full as well. None of them stop, despite me trying to flag them down. So one of my CBL group mates, Jodie, actually came to rescue me, so thank you, Jodie. We concluded the case, so the diagnosis for that one was we thought our patient had COPD with a secondary viral infection, because there was a bit of yellowish sputum coming up. We went over things like spirometry, so we were given a spirometry readout, and we made sure that we understood kind of all the relevant graphs present and values, and checked that that confirmed that it was COPD and not asthma. So in this case we knew that salbutamol, she'd been given a salbutamol inhaler, but it wasn't relieving the symptoms, and her forced expiratory volume, her FEV, did not improve. So that's basically if you imagine trying to blow out in 1 second as much air as you can. In this patient, it was pretty low, what we would have expected if it was asthma that was causing the problems with breathlessness that she had. That if you gave her salbutamol, it should widen up her airways and relieve the problem, but that didn't happen, so we knew that the problem must be coming from elsewhere. I should say actually that when I got the bus home, the driver didn't seem to know what the prices were, or it was going to be quite an effort for him to look through the charts and find out what the prices were going to be, so he just sort of ushered me on, so I didn't have to pay. Got a free bus ride home, and that was fun, so it probably balanced out from the morning. In the evening we actually went out for a meal at Pizza Express in Leamington, followed by drinks at the pub, and board games. Board games and drinks are such an enjoyable evening. While I got fairly well demolished at Scrabble, I did scrape a win in Trivial Pursuit, clearly the game of intellectuals, so, you know, that was fun. So on Thursday we started a brand new CBL case. First thing in the morning, our patient had chest pain that was radiating to her left shoulder and was dealing with long-term angina, which she was currently managing. So like I said before, we tried to adopt a new pattern. We had a very, very good chair. My course mate Jordan, in our CBL group, he was the chair this time. It's done on a rotating basis, so someone's chair scribe and kind of IT person for each case, so 3 sessions. Jordan was really good, really on it, kept us going. We blitzed through the normal anatomy and physiology before we did anything else, and I think that really laid the groundwork well to consider the case before trying to jump in and, you know, nail the diagnosis without the understanding. And going on from that, I think this session more than anything made me realise that CBL, the way that I've maybe been considering it, is it's not about applying what you've learned from the lectures. I think I'd wrongly thought that the point was that you have the lectures, you then use what you've learned in the lectures to go and essentially solve a problem. And while that is obviously part of it, I don't think that's quite right, because it should be about reinforcing what you already know rather than just pure application. I think there's a huge difference between going through what you should know and what you do know before starting a case. And it gets everyone to the same level as well, which makes it a much more harmonious experience. We had our first session on reflection in the afternoon, so doctors and I think healthcare staff in general are required to complete reflections on how certain things have gone. So in this session we tried to brainstorm what we thought a good reflection might be like. So things like the writer should be honest, the reflection should be insightful, you should set yourself targets for improvement, and those targets should be reasonably attainable. And while it's a bit fluffy, I do appreciate that it's really important, and I try to do it when I'm doing my blog posts because I'll forget. The pace of this course is such that the days kind of blur into one another, the weeks go by so quickly, and I think just taking 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the day, well, it takes me 15-20 to write a blog post. I think that's actually been a really helpful experience for me. And they gave us a few reflection models to use in our workbooks, and they said if you want, try and complete one before coming to the session. We didn't have to, but so I tried to do one based on the community day that we'd had on Tuesday, and it turned out that, so I was reading through the book. It presented us with this model, so I thought that sounds like a good model, I'll use this one. I did like a page and a half, which is too long for a reflection, but I tried to have a go, make it nicely insightful. Did that, printed it off, read slightly further in my workbook, and it said like, well, this model is good, we don't recommend you use it, we recommend you use this other one instead. So there's a lesson to be learned in that. Read the full thing before you start. Thursday evening we actually had a reunion meal from the review, so through doing my little intro scene and the photography I was considered enough of the cast to be asked along, and it was really fun. Through to a technical issue, my food order hadn't actually gone through, but there was kind of a lucky mistake, so someone else that was there was about 30 people there I think, started eating the wrong food, so someone else's food, and the wronged person didn't want the food that the other person had ordered, so there was a free food order in, so I just took that one and ended up having curried lamb, which was actually what I ordered, so it worked out really nicely. So that was at the Millennium Balti in Leamington, so not a long walk for me, it was about 20 minutes from the house here, and afterwards we went to Wetherspoons for drinks. And despite wanting to get home, so initially my plan was just go to the meal and come back as soon as possible so I could get plenty of sleep for the 8 AM start on the Friday morning at hospital. That didn't happen, we ended up staying till closing, but it was really fun, I'm glad I did. And again, it was a good chance because there were very few first years in the cast, I think maybe 3 or 4 including me, and so it was a good chance just to hang out with mostly 3rd and 4th year students and just ask, general advice, things like student selected components. It was really valuable. Everyone's super chilled out, and it's useful having those contacts. So Friday morning, like I said, in hospital again. Unfortunately this week was pretty busy, so I didn't get a chance to do the anatomy workbook. And from talking to some of the older years, and from talking to course mates in my year, that's not uncommon at all. Sometimes it's really difficult to find the time to do it because there's a lot. It's like several hours of work, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but our timetables and our obligations are very time consuming. So I just tried to get through the anatomy session with the plasternuts without talking too much, revealing my lack of knowledge. I was asked a couple of things, but I managed to kind of blag my way through it. And I did know some of it, actually, from having done a bit of reading. That said, the lecturers are super nice, like no one's ever going to bully you if you don't know anything. So there's nothing to be worried about if that happens. They'll just explain it to you again and make sure that you understand it, and that's often good for the rest of the group as well. In the afternoon, there was a session missing. Our seminar wasn't on that we would normally have, so I had a bit of a break, and I used that time trying to find some anatomy software. I was looking at different software packages like 3D anatomy learning tools, and found one that had actually been recommended to us by someone on the course. It's called 3D for Medical, I think, Complete Anatomy 5. I'm going to do a demo actually on the channel because it's really cool. I'm going to start using it for learning anatomy now alongside the resources we're already given. But essentially it gives you like a human body, and then you can strip away layers and layers and layers and isolate certain systems. So if you just want to look at the nervous system or the digestive system or just blood vessels, then you can do that. Everything's labelled, You can click on different elements to bring up information on them. You can hide things, fade things. You can even cut out particular areas or fracture bones. There's a ton you can do. And apparently, Professor Richard Tunstall, who is our main anatomy lecturer, actually contributed to some of the text in the app, so that was cool as well. It was $10 in a Black Friday sale. It has absolutely everything I could want, so that was really fun. And we ended Friday with cardiac exams, so looking at the heart, and once again I was the shirtless victim. I do want to point out that I'm not an exhibitionist. I do tend to volunteer for these things, but that's mainly only because it just saves time, because people are understandably, particularly girls, a little bit kind of uncomfortable obviously with getting their kit off in front of other people. I'm not particularly bothered, so I found that it just saves time if I stick my hand up and go. So we were listening to the typical sounds you would hear from heart valves and the different areas of the heart. It's pretty simple. It builds on what we've already done in terms of the general exam. And it actually turned out that one of my course mates had a very unusual heartbeat. She had so if you think the typical heart sounds would go like lub-dub, 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 like that, her second sound was split into 3, so it would sort of go lub-dub-dub, 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 like 2 shorter sounds in the second part. And that's called a gallop rhythm, apparently, so that was interesting. Yesterday, so Saturday, I actually went out with Tom, who you've seen in the videos before. We had a little man date. It was super cute. We went to see Justice League, the new DC Universe film. It was pretty garbage, I'm not going to lie. The plot was all over the place. The script was absolutely abominable. And a lot of the dialogue, it sounded like what a computer pretending to be a human would say in a given situation. Everything was kind of over-rendered, but with bad CGI. So just to qualify, they used too much CGI, and the CGI they did use oftentimes was bad. That said, some of the performances, I think Ezra Miller is playing the Flash. He was pretty good. Gal Gadot, excellent, no problems at all. I think she's done fantastically well recently. I mean, go and see it for Gal Gadot's performance, if no other reason. But we went and had a wander around Coventry. I've not really had a look round so far, even though I live so close. I went to the station on the MBCHB acceptance day. There's a video for that on the channel. But I haven't been into Coventry proper, and I needed some more smart clothes for community days and hospital. So I went to Primark, got a couple of bits. We went for some food, and then went and played D&D in the evening. At our friend Kirsty's place, which was nearby. We finished off a campaign that we've been trying to finish for like the last 4 weeks, but it's just been so difficult to get everyone together in one place. Finished late, but Tom gave me a lift home. It was all fine, and I had a really good time. It was just nice to get away from the med school for a bit and not focus on medicine. And as an early Christmas present, Tom actually got me my very, very own set of kind of gaming dice, which is what you use in role-playing games like D&D. So that was really fun. I need to get him something. I do have a plan. So now caught up to today. Unfortunately, when I got home last night, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, so 1:45 maybe. Very dark. Anyway, that's the point. I came into the house, fell over on the stairs as I was coming in. But then when I came into my room, I have the weights that you've seen before, the little barbells. For some reason, I'd left one of them in front of the door, so I tried to come in the dark, like straight over, but then I tried to twist as I fell, and then landed with my foot sort of twisted round. So my foot is in a lot of pain right now. I've spent most of the day just kind of lounging around with it elevated, with lectures on the TV, making notes. I haven't really been able to go anywhere, so that's not been fun. But the way I've been able to do that is on Black Friday, which was 2 days ago, I actually picked up one of these Amazon Fire TV sticks. The TV's in here, and I'll show you again. I'll make another video about how this process works, just so you guys can see what I do. But using this, it allows you to wirelessly mirror, well, not just mirror, but extend, crucially, your laptop display through an app you can download. So what that allows me to do, I mean, obviously these things are usually used for like Prime Movies, Netflix, YouTube. it converts your dumb TV into a smart one. So I have used it. I consume a lot of content through YouTube, so I've loved it for that. But since I found out you could do this extension, I can have my laptop kind of on my knee, sitting on my bed. Then you can extend the display of the laptop. So what I can do is use the Echo system that records our lectures. I can broadcast that to the TV. Then I can have the PowerPoint on my laptop and use the stylus to make notes, just like I would if I was in a lecture theatre. So that's been really, really good, and I think that's going to change how I approach a lot of the revision. But despite my best efforts, I feel like this video has gone on far too long. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Please be sure to hit that like button if you've enjoyed the video. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to see more videos just like this, go and check out PostGradMedic for more free, useful content, I hope, just like this. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye for now.